John, let's talk about Supergirl.
Yes, the
Supergirl,
next film of the DCU.
the next film DCU after Superman. Now,
Mhm.
The Woman of Tomorrow is based on a comic that a lot of us have either read, or if you haven't read, then we have now certainly heard of because it's what the movie is based on. And they are adapting it. In fact, we're going to take a look at an image later where it's literally the cover page of the script, and it says based on, A Woman of Tomorrow, which of course was written by Tom King. So now that we know that this movie is all casted up, they've got the crew, and we know when it's going into production, which is literally a few days from today when we are doing the show. I think it's about time that we kind of go through and basically count back everything that we know about Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, because we did this before Superman went into production. I think it's time we do that with Supergirl. So with that in mind, John, I wanted to get your opinion before we actually dive into the details. Are you really excited about Supergirl, knowing everything that you do, or are you still sort of skeptical, given that still Tom King is involved in this and he's not your favorite writer? Millie Alcock is
Mhm.
still, I mean, even though she was obviously really good in House of the Dragon, she's still somewhat of an unknown commodity and
Mhm.
from terms of the movies. What are your thoughts on Supergirl so far?
I'm on the fence. I want to be excited, but the thing is, I like can't because it's like it's based on judgment that I don't have. Like I Craig Gillespie, I've seen maybe one of his movies. I would have to double check his filmography, but I haven't seen I Tonya. I haven't seen his god awful fucking Cruella movie. Um, I haven't seen Dumb Money. I haven't seen Lars and the Real Girl. I Okay, so the only two movies I have seen of his are his Fright Night remake, which I did not like very much, and The Finest Hours, which was fucking terrible. So, yes, time to talk about Lobo. We'll get to that soon. But Craig Gillespie, I think, well, I mean, Fright Night was okay. It wasn't like bad, but it was like pales in comparison to the original film. And so I think that's kind of it's tough for me to judge because I haven't seen this entire because the man did get fucking nominated for I Tanya. You know, I've heard great things about Lars and the Real Girl. I've heard good things about Million Dollar Arm. I've heard mixed things about Cruella and Dumb Money. So obviously we'll see. But he did direct and executively produced Pam and Tommy as well. So there was that. I've heard great things about that. Um so he's got like a rather
Is that a
mixed
bad
resume.
thing? I don't know. Krypton's Lobo was too Scottish.
I
I
mean,
don't know. I think Fiona and Lenny would love
Lenny bursts in and be like, "The fuck
it.
you say?" So I
What's wrong with
think
that?
uh
Um,
I can't really I can't we can't nobody on planet Earth can judge Anna Neguera except for James
mhm.
Gunn who and the people in the movie who read the script
She too is a bit of an unknown commodity,
because
right? As a
she
screenwriter,
fucking
she hasn't done a feature
she
script on this scale
she
before.
has written a play, like one
Hmm.
play, and then James Gunn is like, "Oh, the script is blessed from the start, greatest fucking thing I've ever read." So it's like, all right, goddamn.
Yeah.
Um, but so I can't judge that. I can't judge Millie Alcock because I haven't seen House of the Dragon or any of her other, a lot of Australian people in this movie. I haven't seen any of her Australian projects, where she originated, and the only one I can judge is Matthias Schoenaerts, who's been in a couple movies. I've seen him in a couple things, and he's a good actor. Jason Momoa is great. I love him. And um, who else? I remember doing a story about
Well,
the costume designer, and
no, no,
she's done a
we're
lot
gonna
of
get
work. So
into we're definitely gonna get into all of that. I just wanted to kind of get your
yeah,
opinion, like early on, like
like I'm
what your
just saying,
thoughts
like
are. Yeah,
every in regards to everything, I can't judge it too much. The only things I
yeah.
can really judge are Natasha Arts, who I've seen a couple things from, and Jason Momoa, who we've seen as Aquaman. So the only thing that's gonna keep me going, I haven't even seen the Ruthie character, playing her, Eve Ridley, I think her
Which
name is.
we will get into that too. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I haven't seen them, so I can't like I'm like on the fence because like the only thing I know for a fact is based on a Tom King story that leaves me a little irksome. But and the talent I haven't seen enough of to truly judge. So I'm like, I am so on the I am sitting on the chain link fence being unable to go to either side. So that's
Yeah.
how I am.
Well, I mean, as the Watcher said, it will be an introduction to the cosmic side of the DCU for us, especially this early on. Where, I mean, Lanterns comes right after Supergirl, so I guess yes, this would be the introduction to something a little more cosmic. Because even though Superman himself is an alien, we're gonna have other aliens or kaiju's in that movie. You're still gonna have a very earthbound story, and then that's the same for Peacemaker season 2. Of course, Cruiser Commandos as well. So until we get to Supergirl, we're not really going out into the cosmos with the DCU. So kind of like what the Guardians of the Galaxy did for the early MCU days, I think this is kind of the equivalent with Supergirl. And so good comparison there, Watcher. Now, with that said, I want to start off with a story here where there was a rumor going around for a while that Alexander Skarsgård and maybe even Bill Skarsgård had both auditioned for the Creme of the Yellow Hills character. He recently said that, hey, not only was I not the first choice, I ain't interested at all because this was the rumor, and then he recently just shut the rumor down completely, saying, no, I was at home, and there were rumors that me and Alex were competing. I was like, no one's called me, never read for it, never talked to James, James Gunn, that is. So he pretty much said that, hey man, we weren't interested in Creme of the Yellow Hill. We definitely did not, audition for Lex Luthor. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you believe that these guys, the two brothers, were involved at any point, whether it's for Lex Luthor or whether it's for Creme of the Yellow Hill?
Um, I mean, I'd be willing to believe Alexander Skarsgård was like the top choice, and they're like, ah, shit, we can't get the A-lister. Might as well get this Matthias Schoenaerts guy. So, I mean, no offense to him,
He
he's
would have been
but,
a good pick. I mean, again, like a very
but
high
again,
profile actor.
Alexander Skarsgård is a name. Matthias
Yeah.
Schoenaerts isn't really a name, so much so you can barely pronounce the name
Hmm.
to all us, uneducated, fucking uncultured bitches. So, if this was the case, then it would have been a good choice. But I have faith that Sean Arts will do a good job. Um, Crime Dog, fuck you for that dad joke. Anyway, um,
I
but yeah,
appreciate it.
I think would have been a good choice. The fact that they didn't isn't a huge deal. He can move on to other things, and
Hmm.
you know, whatever that may be. I think that's fine. Um,
Yeah.
That could be good, but that would be really big for way later on. And
Blackest Night,
plus,
I think, is something they gotta wait to tackle as a Green Lantern
but
story.
that would work because it seems like with the older Hal Jordan, he's maybe gonna die, maybe turn into Parallax, and
Yeah.
that's what and Blackest Night was kind of after like Hal Jordan, like he came back in Green Lantern Rebirth, he kind of built his way up, and then Blackest Night happened. So they could do that, but again, that might be too old now because Kyle Chandler's 59, and
Yeah.
that might be too late because that would be like 10 years down the line, and he would be like 70. So I think we're past a Blackest Night adaptation at this point, which sucks, but like that's I think that's too much to ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and as Man of Time is saying, I think Alexander Skarsgård should probably play a bigger role than what might be in this case like a one-off character because I don't know if Krem is going to survive the movie, or if he does, I don't know how big of a role he has in the larger DC or will have. I feel like if you're going to bring in somebody the caliber of Alexander Skarsgård, even a Bill Skarsgård, you should bring them into a role that's probably going to get a few appearances, not just like a one-off villain, So I do agree with you. But talking about like maybe Bradley Cooper needs a role, maybe give it to him. Well, we do have somebody who has been cast for the role of Creme of the Yellow Hill or Yellow Hills. Of course, Alexander Skarsgård would have been fantastic, but he was the first choice, even if he was. And yes, you know what? With Nicholas Hoult is going to be a Lex Luthor, I wouldn't mind. I think we actually did a fan casting before Nicholas Hoult got cast, and we had both of the Skarsgård brothers in there. So we have definitely gone over these things before. But let's talk about Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and the stuff that we do know about it, rather than speculating or rumors that we have heard of. So we're gonna just divide it up a little bit. I think the article here in Collider does a good job. So John, first I wanted to kind of get you to kind of give us a quick summary on who is Supergirl in essence, especially the Woman of Tomorrow version of Supergirl that we're gonna get. What kind of iteration are we gonna get? Is it gonna be similar to what we got in the DCEU in the Flash? Is it gonna be
Hmm.
closer to the TV show Supergirl that went on for so many seasons? Is it like the Supergirl that was in the Christopher Reeve continuity, or is this something completely different? Because of course it is based specifically on the Woman of Tomorrow comic book.
I think we're gonna get like a mix of different things. Now, if I were to take a guess, they're probably gonna be doing the newer continuity backstory with her um being rocketed with Kal-El at the same time she gets knocked off course and she doesn't get to Earth until way later. That is like usually the backstory they go with. Argo City is just kind of weird to a little bit too Silver Age.
Yeah.
I could see that, but it's more likely that it's just they both sent off. She got knocked off course, and then he got to Earth. She didn't. So I could see that happening. Um, I No, it could be set after because, you know, they could make it so that like they've met and like maybe, this takes place a couple years later and or a year later and Crypto is like Superman's like, "Well, I'm stuck here on Earth. I can't help
Hmm.
you, but Crypto, he can help you."
Or
And
like,
so he like
Crypto, you go with Kara, take care of her, she'll take care of you,
exactly.
kind of thing. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, like I could see them doing that. Like, yeah, that's my theory is that Crypto came with Clark and they got to Earth and then she didn't. Um, so I
Spoiler
think
alert.
that's what I think.
Yeah.
So I
Well, I mean, Manus is asking, like, what about you, Dan? What are your thoughts on that project so far? Just really quickly before, we continue on with the conversation. I think this movie is finally giving Supergirl the big screen, treatment, like the big blockbuster tentpole treatment that it deserves. Because the character of Supergirl has for the longest time gotten like second billing. I mean, yes, outside of the Jobber Superman era of Supergirl, the TV show, I think Supergirl like has generally been treated as just like a spin-off side character to Superman, which I think she's more than that. She's not just, oh, there's a Superman, therefore there's a Supergirl. Even though that's maybe where things started, I think the character has such a rich history now, and Woman of Tomorrow is one of the best comics, showing a side of Supergirl that we don't necessarily always see. Certainly, we haven't seen that iteration in live action. Something that's a little edgier, a little darker, and it gives you a lot of dramatic moments to explore, a lot of growth that has to happen. This Supergirl, saw a lot of really terrible shit go down. She didn't just get put into a pod necessarily and get sent to Earth and like just wake up in Kansas and then grow up with the Kents. The Supergirl saw like her parents die and Krypton die. That's if they're going off the comic book, at least that's where they're headed with this. So I think it gives us an opportunity to see whereas Superman is going to be a brighter take on the character, this Supergirl seems to be going the other direction compared to the other Supergirl characters we have seen. I mean, yes, the Supergirl in the Flash was kind of like, she's in prison, she's really had a bad experience with humans, and so, but really it was a side character. We didn't really get to explore that iteration so much, even though Sasha Kaya did a great job with what she was given. I'm looking forward to seeing, just what it looks like having Supergirl literally get her own movie. And Millie Alcock is talented enough that I think she can lead the film and lead it to places where the character has never been before. This movie, in my opinion, has a potential to make at least what the first Wonder Woman did, which was like over 700 million, similar to the Batman. And potentially even more. I mean, especially because it's going to be coming after Superman, which will set the stage so people are like, oh, this is the next movie in the same franchise. And if Superman does really well, then people are going to flock to the theater even more so to see Supergirl. So I'm really
mhm.
excited for that. And Figure Drawing saying DC should have borrowed Marvel casting directors law. No, I mean, I think they're doing a pretty good job so far. Um, and you guys are getting into the height of the character thing. Millie Alcock's only 5'2", saying figure drawing, and then he's also mentioning that Supergirl should look super next to Superman, who's 6'4". Not necessarily. I mean, honestly, I don't care. And even if there is a height difference, you can totally work around that. The way you film the characters, like I bring up every time, Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz did that movie Night and Day, and there's a lot of scenes in there where they're standing next to each other, and they make Tom Cruise look as tall as Cameron Diaz, even though he's not. Like they make him look as tall as a lot of his co-leads, even though he's not necessarily. And that's not just him. There's a lot of other examples of that. So you can, if you wanted to, clearly fake that. Like you don't need to make it so that Millie Alcock looks like she's a good foot and a half shorter than David Cornsweet. So I think that that's not something that I usually get concerned about. It's all about the magic of filmmaking. So you can definitely get around it. Now we also just talked about a little bit of what we think the movie is going to be
Hmm.
about, especially if it's based on the comic. So with that in mind, let's kind of talk a little bit further about the cast of the movie, right? So we have been hinting at it so far. The four leads that we have got are on the screen here. I've also kind of pulled them up on the this notebook that I've got here where we kind of noted down everything we know. So we know the release date is June 26, 2026. So it's a year and a half away. And then the main cast, we know four names so far. Millie Alcock, of course, as the titular Supergirl Kara Zor-El. Jason Momoa being the biggest name so far and the latest name to join in as Lobo. You see Matthias Schoenaerts as Creme of the Yellow Hills, and we see Eve Ridley, who's going to be playing Ruthie Marie Knoll, and James Gunn as late as a few months ago was saying he was, I think around New York Comic Con, they had just been seeing auditions for Ruthie. So Ruthie was probably, cast not that long ago. And Matthias Schoenaerts also got cast over the summer of last year. So um, they've got their leads. I mean, these are the leads of the movie. I mean, we don't know how much Lobo is going to be in there, but we definitely know that he's already got the script. I mentioned earlier that, on the cover of the script, it says based on the comic by Tom King and Bilquis Evely. It's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. James Gunn's already sent out or not James Gunn, but Craig Gillespie's already sent out copies, whether it's for Lobo's eyes only or otherwise. John, of the cast that I've mentioned here, the four names, the four actors, clearly Millie Alcock and Jason Momoa have those Game of Thrones connections, and they're probably the two most well-known names. But just how much do you think the other characters of Ruthie and Creme of the Yellow Hills are going to factor into the story? Particularly because Ruthie is the character that's out for revenge on Creme for killing her parents, and Supergirl kind of gets caught up in the story, and then you got of course Lobo
Yeah,
somehow tying into this. How do you think this is going to play out? Do you think this cast has the potential to again just have some breakout performances, especially with the two
I
lesser
think
known
so.
actors?
I think so. I think this might make it'll either make or break names. Worst comes to worst, we'll just get a Lobo movie out of this. This will fail, but like you know what, Jason Momoa, we already promised you a Lobo movie. Let's you
Yeah.
know my main man. You know, um, but I think yeah, I think I like the cast. I think it's a good cast. And from what is known outside of the realm of what I know, like known pop culturally, in terms
Yeah.
of what people have said. People have said out Millie Alcock's a great actress. I've seen Matthias Schoenaerts. I think he's a good actor. Jason Momoa is awesome. Again, perfect for Lobo. I've said this for
Yeah.
years.
He's
Eve
literally
Ridley,
Lobo in
I
real
don't think
life,
I've
that's
seen Eve Ridley in anything, but I'm sure she'll. Hopefully, she'll be good because usually child actors are kind of either really hit or really miss. So I hope she's on the really hit part.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yep. By the way, the question the watcher was asking, do you think that Supergirl's costume is going to be similar to that of Superman? I think that all depends on whether Clark's costume in Superman is something that he came up with or his parents did or maybe somebody on Earth did versus whether that's that's like, part of his Kryptonian culture. Given that
yeah,
the Fortress
essentially
of
yes.
Solitude is going to be a pretty expansive part of the movie, at least based on the trailer so far, I'd imagine his suit has some Kryptonian heritage. So my inkling would be to answer your question, Watcher, is that Supergirl's costume is going to be similar because I do believe the costume we're seeing is like a Kryptonian costume. It's not just something that that they just made it on Earth just because it needs. I mean, yes, you can have his crest and everything, but you could still have it be a Earth-made costume. So to that end, I think they're going to match pretty closely. I do believe they're going to match
Yeah,
pretty closely.
yeah. I think what they could do is I think go with because again it feels like they're going with New 52 kind of shit. well, especially with the lines and the collar with,
Hmm.
Superman. I think with her, they might go with like a Kryptonian warrior dress,
Yep.
like they did in like that's what they explained for the New 52. Like that's what like Zor-El gave her. And then she got sent to Earth, all that shit. So I think that might be the case. Like I don't think
Hmm.
we're gonna get the traditional Supergirls. Maybe eventually we will, like when like maybe she's hanging on so much to like the Kryptonian part that she's gonna be wearing like traditional Kryptonian dress, and
Yeah.
maybe it'll be more like the New 52 suit. Maybe it'll be more like like the Supergirl, the later Supergirl suit, where it's like kind of like one big onesie type thing.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of like what Superman's is, but still more like Kryptonian. I could see them doing that because it's like I could see this being like a story about like Supergirl letting go of Krypton kind of thing. Like maybe in Supergirl at the beginning, she like just like maybe she's been there for like a couple months. And it's like the great thing about Supergirl's character is that she's nothing like Clark, which is something the TV show majorly failed at. Is that she's an outsider. She remembers Krypton. She was like there for I think she was like 13, 14 when that went kaput. So, I feel like, or they might make her older here, like she was 18, and they might do that. Whatever they decide to do, maybe she's aged slowly in like the Phantom Zone or revolving around the sun, like in New 52, or whatever they decide to do, like to like make her like whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but like she remembers Krypton. She's kind of a like at least with modern interpretations, she's a little bit of an edgier character. I don't want to say edgy because that implies like grimdark crap, but I think she's a little bit more violent. She's not like this happy-go-lucky kind of character. She was kind of in the Silver Age, but everyone kind of was in the Silver Age, but she's definitely a bit of a darker character, a little bit of a kind of has that edge to her of like, but she's more of an outsider. Like Superman sees himself as human. He's like, Superman is what I do, Clark is who I am. Like,
Yep.
but she didn't spend her life on Earth. She just got here and she's like, I'm not of these people. I look like them, but I am not of these people.
Right.
So
She
I
relates to
think
that Earth very differently than Clark does.
yeah, she's like, Earth isn't my people, Krypton is my people. And I feel like that could be real that hence why I think it is a smart decision to have her first adventure be very cosmic because it's like she relates more to like space and these planets and this adventure than that of Earth. And I feel like her going into space and her wanting to like, get drunk for her 21st birthday kind of thing, whatever. I don't know if that's what it was in the book. I don't know if they're gonna do that for the movie, but
They could. Maybe that's how
they,
the
they
movie
could.
starts. You know.
I mean, they could. So whatever they decide to do, it doesn't matter. But I think, like, and then maybe through like being like going through this cosmic adventure, maybe she realizes that maybe Earth can maybe not be my true home, but be my secondary home. Because I feel like
Hmm.
that's what Clark is going through in Superman. Like he is a man of two worlds, and he's gonna be try to be in line with his Kryptonian heritage more. Because that's what the original synopsis that James Gunn gave us back in January of 2023. So I feel like that could be the case. So Supergirl can kind of go through a similar thing, but it's the reverse. It's instead of like Clark realizing his Kryptonian heritage, it's Supergirl realizing that Earth can be her home as well, and humanity can be her second family. Play the clip if you want, and kind of have it be sort of like a parallel between the two, and make her that. And the reason this is the second movie really make that work to have it be that parallel. I think that could be a really interesting case with that.
What's real is family.
Yep. I was just waiting for the right time.
Yep.
But of course we have talked about the cast. Now let's talk a little bit about the crew of the, that's behind the scenes. So I put together a whole list. I pulled it off IMDb. I'm snacking a little bit here. It's been a long show, and I'm starting to get a little hungry here. But so you mentioned earlier, John, that Craig Gillespie is directing. Of course, Anna Naguera wrote the script. It's based on a comic book by Tom King. The character was created by Otto Binder, and then Al Plastino. So you've got like the screenwriting credits and everything. I think what interests me a lot is that Rob Hardy is the director of photography and Neil Lamont is a production designer. Two great talents who have done a lot of great work before, and they're certainly not like newbies by any means, which means that they're putting some very seasoned veterans in this project on some key department head roles. And then Anna Shepard as the costume designer, also a great pick. And of course you got James Gunn, Peter Safran there as the producers, and you've got a few executive producers as well. And then I noted down that Coley Calhoun is going to be Millie Alcock's dialect coach. Do you feel like Millie Alcock's gonna do like an American accent in this movie, or do you think they're gonna have her just do her? I mean, given that they have a dialect coach, I imagine she's not just gonna do her own native Australian accent, right?
No, I don't think they're going to do that.
And so with that said, though, which of these names on the crew list stand out to you the most? Who do you? Obviously, the director is gonna have a big impact, and Anna Naguera wrote the screenplay, so she's a crucial part of the picture. But any of these names stick out to you in terms of like where you're gonna be looking for
Rob
key
Hardy,
elements of
definitely.
success?
I remember we were talking about that
Yeah.
way back when. I mean, Mission Impossible Fallout that had some and that had Superman. Annihilation, Ex Mach. He works with Alex Garland a lot, and Alex Garland does great work. Mission Impossible Fallout. He's done a lot of great stuff, both on film and in television as well. So I think that that was definitely a really fucking
Hmm.
great addition. I think we're gonna get a lot of great stuff with that. So whatever I'm not as familiar with the other names. But I remember the costume designer, we saw her filmography and that was really good too. I know she worked on a bunch of other superhero projects, so she has some prowess in regards to that. So maybe it was the production designer. I don't remember. I don't remember if it was production designer or costume designer. It might have been costume designer, but whoever it is, I
It's
remember
it's the
seeing.
costume designer. That's
Yes.
Kennedy
Okay.
Shepard
So
right
that
there.
was
Yeah.
okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
and I'll
think
pull
that
up. Let
that
me.
was great as well.
So these are her credits. You look at Spider-Man: Far From Home, Now You See Me 2, Fury, Maleficent, Captain America: The First Avenger. So she's in Inglorious Bastard. She's Fred Claus. She's definitely done a lot of superhero movies. Some really good ones too. I love the first Avenger. I think that's probably still one of the best MCU movies to date. And then Maleficent, of course, American Assassin, Overlord. Far From Home was like the first billion-dollar Spider-Man movie ever. So yeah, I mean she's got a good amount of high-profile pictures under her list. Even Schindler's List. Speaking of
Yeah.
lists, so yeah, I mean again, great veteran talent, and so I'm excited again that they've put together quite the crew here, which again goes to show you that they mean business with this movie. I mean,
Hmm.
they've got a budget of like 150 million or possibly more. That's just an estimated number, and that's like those are big boy numbers. Those are big girl numbers. Like you're making just another small spin-off. This is not a $40 million Clayface movie. This is a big time summer blockbuster. So I'm really glad that Supergirl is getting that kind of treatment. Now, one of the other things that it says here in this notebook that I put together, which is the filming date. So it starts filming on January 13th. That's literally like a few
Hmm.
days away. You can count them on one hand from when we are doing the show. And it looks like they're going to start filming, of course, in January. They're going to go until like around May, which makes sense, around 5 months time. And it looks like they're going to be filming in London as well as I believe in the Nordics. I think I read Iceland somewhere, but we do have some news regarding that, coming from CBR where they mentioned this that they're going to start filming in January, and this is
Yep.
from like Production Bulletin, and we have heard of that before. And then of course I think I read this in another article from CBR where they talked a little bit more about it. With like they're gonna shoot for like 5 months, which is fair. And then London is a big part of it because they're the Batman at Leavesden Studios. They've shot a ton of stuff. Harry Potter. They've done a lot of that there, and now this will be the latest project to film in London, England for Warner Brothers and for DC Studios, which is going to have a big presence. They're expanding the Leavesden Studios and adding
Mhm.
more sound stages. And James Gunn said early on when that was happening, he was even part of the press release when they announced that expansion, that DC Studios will have a big presence there. So and then James Gunn Superman, of course, did utilize the Nordic landscapes. They're shot in Svalbard, Norway. So I wouldn't be surprised that whether it's Fortress of Solitude scenes or something else, that if it's part of the Supergirl storyline, that they go back to those same locations. What do you think about, again, just the length of time that they're filming for, the fact that they're starting so soon, and they'll have basically if they wrap filming in May, they have over a year for post production, similar to Superman. And then again, just the locations, between the studios in London and then the Nordics, whether it's Norway or Iceland or otherwise. To me, this follows a very similar track to Superman, which again tells me that they're treating this like a big movie. What do you think?
They're giving it the respect it deserves,
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty fucking awesome. I think
yeah,
that that's definitely Supergirl deserves it. The first movie was fucking terrible. The show was terrible. Her appearance in the Flash, she was good, but the movie was terrible. So it's good budget, it's good everything. So that's I feel like Supergirl deserves. The TV show was also not good. So like I think Supergirl deserves it. Again, I wish it was better source material, but you know I can't pickers can't be choosers. But I think Supergirl's a great character, especially the modern version of the character.
hmm
So I think that's pretty awesome. So like they're giving her the time of day. They're giving this production the time of day. It's not like, fucking whatever. Supergirl. She's not Superman. No, it's just like Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Let's fucking go.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
of course. I think we'll be getting. I like
We
maybe
probably will.
something more traditional because I know that the boots picture, him putting on his boots for Superman, got a lot of flack. So now it's 5 day. Well, for people on the East Coast, it's 5 days. But yeah, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Very very exciting.
Yep. And then Ron saying like they better treat all of their movies like big movies. I think so. I mean, these are event films. I know that, Clayface has a smaller budget and all, but even then, I mean, the movie's gonna be treated like a big. Still a DCU movie, and it's probably still gonna have connections to other, characters that we're gonna see later on in the DCU or already have seen in the DCU at that point. So even if it is a smaller budget, I mean, even something like Clayface, I'm sure is gonna get like the big studio treatment in terms of the marketing and everything. So, with that said, of course, Supergirl, I'm glad that it's getting that treatment. And yes, as it says there, January 13, 2025, it's days away, 5 days or less depending on when you're watching this. Josh dropping in a little late. He's saying Hugo Strange, and then Ricardo. I think we already had that conversation. You might be watching a little bit behind, but and then Ricardo dropping in. Hello, Ricardo, in the chat. The Watcher saying you can make an event out of a horror film. Every screen people make it one. Yeah,
Hmm.
LOL. Yes, they do. They do. Ricardo also said earlier, around what box office numbers do you think Superman and Supergirl should reach for a decent start to this universe? The Watcher already answered saying Superman should make around 600 million and Supergirl around 500 million, John. So the Watcher gave his opinion. What are your thoughts? What do you think should be like, what's the ideal number, or like the maybe even a range where if James Gunn and Peter Safran have in mind like, hey, if it makes this much money, we consider it a success, both for Superman and Supergirl.
Um, I think okay, so for both Superman and Supergirl,
Yeah.
okay, I feel like Zaslav is probably expecting like 2 billion, but and then I feel like we're gonna get BVS again when it doesn't hit 2 billion. So, or it's like it's 800
I mean,
million, but we were expecting a
but
billion. So,
honestly though, again, I don't care about David Zaslav. I mean, yes, David Zaslav obviously matters. I don't think David Zaslav in his right mind. No, but it's not realistic to consider any of these movies to make $1 billion. Let's be quite frank. The DCEU died a very sad death, and the Batman franchise, while it made over 700 million, it certainly wasn't $1 billion.
so I
So
okay.
if we're
So
being
if I
realistic,
were to
like,
take a guess,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a guess because I know that people like James Gunn shut down the rumor that it was like, oh, it's $334 million or some
Yeah.
ridiculous amount. So without marketing, because marketing is always tough because they never include marketing in the main budget that's like released everywhere. You gotta like,
Yeah.
it's tough to see. So
I mean,
I'm
look,
gonna take a
honestly, they're probably
guess.
gonna spend like over 100 million marketing this movie, I'd imagine. If they're
Yes,
gonna treat
that's
it like a
I was gonna
Superman,
get
you
to
know?
that. Shh. But I would just in terms of if we're okay, because we got to start off with the budget.
Yes.
The budget for Superman, it hasn't been revealed yet. So my guess, I would say it's probably 150 to 175 million dollars. I don't think it's I if it was released tomorrow and they say 200, I'd believe it. But I'm gonna play. I think they're gonna kind of play it safe with this, not have it be like that huge amount.
I
So like
mean, Man of Steel
150.
was over 200 million, but they offset it by like like around 50 million in tax credits. So ultimately,
Right.
like all in, Warner Brothers
I'm
probably
not
spent
including
like
tax
175.
credits, rebates. I'm not including. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like the thing that's released on Wikipedia
Yeah.
and Box Office Mojo. I'm gonna say 150 to 175 million, maybe eking to like 190 million. Like I would say 150, 190 million. I don't think they're gonna go above 200 because they want to actually get their
Yeah.
money back. Because
Which for a
and on top of
VFX
the fact,
heavy movie, you need that
and
kind
it's
of
a
money.
VFX heading movie,
Yeah.
and but on top of the fact the marketing is Summer of Superman, even though it's
Yeah.
coming out in the summer. I don't know how it's going to be a summer of whatever, but precursor to Winter of Superman, really. But I think they're probably, as you said, they're probably going to spend about 110 million on marketing. So that would be if we go to the higher end, that's going to be about $300 million. So they're going to need triple that. So that would probably be 900. I would say in order for Superman to be a success, it would need 850 to 900 million dollars. I think that's again that's maybe on the lower end I would say 700 to 750. On the higher end 900 million, maybe even a billion. So that's what I'm thinking now. Supergirl, I think, yeah, I mean, look at the Batman. That was $770 million around there.
That's pretty much, yeah, yeah.
So that's a good, but the thing is, they're like, oh, that's good, right? They don't want that's good. They want like fucking $1 billion. But again, we're not going with that. We're just going off of what we think. So with Supergirl, I don't think they're gonna crack. I don't think they're gonna crack 100 million. I understand it's cosmic, but green screens are getting like that's honestly cheaper than practical stuff nowadays.
I mean, especially with the
So,
volume, you can do it in camera now. It's even better than green screen.
right. So I'm gonna say again, Supergirl is not as much of a commodity as Superman is. So, especially with pretty much every live action interpretation failing on the big screen. So they're probably not going to crack 100 million. I'm going to take a guess 100 million marketing, 150 million, or not 150 million total, 50 million for marketing. I think they're going to market it, but not too much. So about half as much as what Superman is, like $150 million, I think, market budget plus marketing. With that, I think this needs to make maybe like 500 million to 600 million to be a success. So I would say I'm gonna say 600 million to be a success because I'm really like going for the higher number. So I'm gonna say 1.5 billion for these two movies at the very best, I think would be very successful in their eyes. But I could also see it being like 800 million between the two, also being as like 800 to 1.5 billion would be like the net success in regards to these two movies. Um, so that's what I'm gonna go with. I think if we're but 100 1.5 would be very good success. I think 850 would be a decent start as you asked. So I'm gonna say 850. Again, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a finance guy, I'm not a Wall Street bro. You know,
Yeah.
I'm me.
Well,
Um
I think those are good numbers to work with. I think they would be really happy if that is indeed what they end up with. I pulled up the box office for Man of Steel because to kind of provide my opinion on the matter. you look at the budget for that movie was 225 million roughly. They did offset a bunch of it with tax credits. That's why we got to see 7-Eleven, IHOP, Sears, and all kinds of different product placement in that movie. And they paid quite a bit of money for that so that they can blow up the gas station, destroy the house of pancakes, and throw a bunch of like Kryptonians into Sears, but half of those brands don't even exist anymore. But anyway, you can easily offset your budget with a lot of that. I think Superman already did with like shooting in Cleveland and Cincinnati. They got a lot of tax credits from the state of Ohio. So
Hmm.
with that in mind, I'm sure Supergirl is going to try to take advantage of some of that as well. But the reason I put Man of Steel on Box Office Mojo here is because when you look at the numbers, with around a 200, let's say an odd $1 million budget, and they spent over 100 million in marketing, which means all in they were probably like 350 or so into like the amount of investment financially that Warner Brothers had in Man of Steel, and they made 670 million. Now typically for a movie to be profitable, the way things kind of work out, you roughly it's a rough number, but generally speaking 60 to 70% of the what you get from the box office is what goes to, well usually it's on the higher end of that, like 70% of it, let's say 70-30, like 70% of that take from the box office is what goes to the studios. The rest
Hmm.
of that 30% is what the theaters take, the distributors, or or rather not the distributors but like the exhibitors is the way to say it. AMC, Regal, Cinemark, all of those, whichever theater you go to. So keeping that in mind, 70% of 670, I'm gonna do some rough math here. That's probably like around 500 million or so, or like somewhere around that. We could correct my math, and then when you subtract the 350 or so that they spent on marketing in the budget, Man of Steel made like over $100 million. They weren't Warner Brothers was happy with the financial performance of the movie. I mean, yes, they would have liked for it to have made more, but given it was the first Superman movie in a long time, it was a very different take on the character and it was a reboot. And Superman wasn't always seen as the most bankable character anyway. Batman is more bankable, as we have talked about. I think they were happy with that. They were more concerned about the critical reception, and then with Batman v Superman, that really turned the tide. But of course, that's in the past. I just wanted to bring this up for reference, though, because now that we get back into this conversation with Supergirl, I
Hmm.
think with Supergirl, they're gonna spend roughly 2 to 3 million, 100 million. Let's say, like you said, on the higher end, let's go between marketing and the budget, all in. Let's say they spend 275 million, right? Now, if they do that, I would imagine that if in order for them to make a profit on this movie, they would want Supergirl to pull in somewhere in the neighborhood of what Man of Steel did, roughly around 600 million. That would mean that it made a profit of around 50 to 100 million. That's plenty to work with, and especially I think they're gonna want to have the critics and the audience ratings for this, the reception, to be positive. That will matter even more so. I think if this movie does kind of what the first Shazam movie did and makes like 300 to 400 million dollars in the box office, it's barely going to eke out a profit, but if it is received well, that's going to matter more in, early on in the cinematic universe, because you get established and reestablish the goodwill with DC fans, because a lot of DC fans, and just the general movie going audience has been disenchanted with like the mess that the DCEU became by especially in the towards the last few years of its existence. And there's been a lot of like just in the eyes of the average movie going audience, just a lowering of expectations for DC, products and movies and TV shows. The Penguin is obviously doing a lot of work to fix that. The Batman is doing that. Joker Folio did not do that. But if the new DCU with Superman and Supergirl can do it, then it sets a really good platform for like a movie like Clayface, and then The Brave and the Bold, and even for the Batman 2 to kind of like take off and make like $1 billion potentially. Even the Authority, I think, could make $1 billion. Superman, they're gonna spend like at least 300 million all in with the marketing and the budget of the movie. And with that said, that movie, I think, if in order for it to be profitable, they're gonna want to have it make over 700 million, or certainly make at least what Man of Steel did. And if Man of Steel 10 years ago made 670 million dollars, I think a lot of comparisons will be made that if Superman does not make as much as Man of Steel, I mean certainly the Snyder Bros will be out for blood, but so I do hope that it does. The Watcher saying, I really feel like Superman has a potential for a billion. And I think it depends on if they keep playing their cards right from here on. Because obviously they've done a fantastic job of the marketing already with the trailer, with the teaser to the teaser trailer. James Gunn is making every little bit of information he puts out an event in and of itself, which is exactly what you want to do if you're trying to do a summer of Superman, make this a whole year of Superman. And I hope that they will apply the same kind of techniques to Supergirl as well. Another new name I see in the chat right now is Chuck Rod. Hello, Chuck. We don't usually see you in the chat much, but hello. You're saying it was a great move to have crypto on both Superman and Supergirl movies. Crypto alone will bring half the moviegoers to the theaters, and crypto plays a bigger role in Supergirl, I think. Well, it will depend on again how the timeline of all of this works out. Because James Gunn did say Supergirl wasn't originally going to be the second movie in the DCU. It just happened to be that script was ready first. So maybe it does include crypto like in the comic that it's adapting, or maybe it doesn't. But I mean, I would lean on crypto being in there because obviously it makes the movie much easier to market, as we already saw with the Superman trailer. A lot of people are just going to go see the movie simply because crypto's in Superman. So it would be just wonderful to continue to see that character evolve with Supergirl because he's certainly a part of it. And like John said earlier, it would make sense story wise because that way it's like, oh, take crypto with you, he'll take good care of you, or you'll take like good care of him, and you could kind of be there for each other going out in the cosmos. Nico saying my theory for Supergirl is Lobo is going to be the guy in the end that helps Supergirl. Could be. That would be certainly a nice stepping off point for Lobo to go off and have his own movie, which we will get into a little bit later this week. So definitely stay tuned for that. Then let's see. Ricardo saying Man of Steel did 670 with 225. Yes, and it was profitable. It made plenty of money. So I'm just saying Superman will be compared to Man of Steel's box office. That's just a fact of life. So certainly, I think for Superman, it needs to make that much money for it, to be considered like, hey, look, comparatively speaking, a success. Even though it's not a fair statement to say because Man of Steel came out at a very different time for comic book movies. It also came out, without having a whole DCEU behind it, and now the DC brand I don't think is in as good of a place as it was back then, even though it wasn't necessarily in the best of places, but it was coming off the Dark Knight trilogy, so like there was a lot of good, let's just say good cash built up for the DC brand versus today is really a mixed bag. Then Ricardo also said that 800 million is good. For Superman, yes, 800 million is definitely good. I think anything over 600 million is fantastic. And then Enterprising saying Superman, in my
I would
opinion,
say
just has to do the
650 to
Batman's
700,
numbers.
but that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, but like again, like I said, 670 is what Man of Steel did. Let that be the marker. Like that's the unofficial marker for success. But Enterprising was saying Superman, in my opinion, just has to do the Batman's numbers to be a decent success. 700 to 800 million is a realistic projection. 900 plus would be phenomenal. I can see a Supergirl movie, a good Supergirl movie, hitting 700 million. Yeah. I mean, I think that, and like John, you mentioned earlier, if they do get to like 8 to 900 for Superman, and let's say 700 for Supergirl, the first two movies in the DCU would have made almost $2 billion combined. That is about as good of a start as you can get off to. The first two movies in the DCEU, despite them not being the most well-received movies, between the almost 900 million that BVS made and the 670 that Man of Steel made, that was like a good 1.5 billion or so. So I think again they're gonna make that comparison as well, even though BVS and Supergirl are it's like apples and oranges. But like Enterprising said, if Superman reaches past 900 million, it will go down as the most financially successful Superman in history, which it will be.
Because you got inflation, you
away.
got more marketing to deal with. You had
absolutely.
Yeah.
There's more competition. It's a different time. I mean, we still haven't quite 100% recovered from the pandemic, and then people's, viewing habits have changed. There's more competition. People might be, trying to decide between hanging out at home and playing, the next GTA versus going to see Superman in the movie theater. But then again, that's a whole different Pandora's box I don't want to get into. But there was a comment from blah 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 earlier saying, "Do you think we'll get Aquaman in the DCU?" Not saying we'll get another film, but maybe he's introduced through someone like Aqualad and Teen Titans. I know the Watcher kind of responded by saying that there's no rush to get characters like the Flash and Aquaman into this new universe, which I agree with because James Gunn has already said that they're taking a beat on development. That was his words on the Flash. And then there's really no mention of the Aquaman, and particularly with Jason Momoa playing Lobo, I think they're gonna want to leave Aquaman on the sidelines for a while longer because you don't want to confuse the audiences who just saw Jason Momoa as Aquaman like
Hmm.
literally like a year ago. So,
Yeah.
or less than a year ago. So like why immediately go back to that same well. Actually, it's been a year. It's been over a year, but it's still like it still feels recent. So they're probably gonna want that to rest for a few years, and they've got a slate that's full. There's no need to fill a gap with Aquaman. You can explore so many other characters. But I
Yeah.
think John, you and I are on the same page. I think combined 1.5 to 1.6 billion overall. Like when you look at it individually, Superman making somewhere between 6 to 700, or maybe over 700 would be the ideal number. For Supergirl,
Hmm.
you'd want to do 600. I think the floor for them would be if Superman made 600 million and just crossed that threshold and that's it. They would be happy with that. They'd say, okay, we could do better, but that's good. And then for Supergirl, that would be like 500 million, I'd imagine, would be what we're looking at. And that's plenty good. That's plenty good enough. That's over $1 billion for the first two movies. The first two MCU movies didn't do that. I mean, the first two DCEU movies did because they were leading off with Superman and then Superman and Batman and also Wonder Woman. And it was at a time when superhero movies were so popular, they were just like even a bad movie like the Suicide Squad, which I still have fun with. I can admit it was hacked to bits, but I still have fun with it. But nonetheless, it did make like a good 700, 600, 700 million, even though it wasn't a very good movie because it made all of that money in the first couple of weeks and went on to win an Oscar for best costume design. But you
Best
just
makeup and
don't. Best
hairstyling.
makeup and hairstyling, yes. But you just don't see that anymore. Superhero movies don't just make a shit ton of money by default. They have to be good. They have to be good. They have to be unique. They have to be different. That's what the Batman was. That's what the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was. Like, movies that both did really, really well. I mean, Joker for All You Do was a terrible movie. It completely shit the bed. Even Venom 3, was the lowest grossing of the franchise. And quite frankly, I think the first Venom movie out of all three of them was the best one, and it made the most money. It's no longer a guarantee that you can release a superhero movie and it's going to make 300, 400 million off the bat. You need
Right.
to make a really good movie to get the audiences to come to the theaters to watch your particular film. So with that in mind, I mean, yes, I think at the end of the day, Supergirl, well, it's got a director, it's got a cast. The script is, definitely was written a long time ago. Lobo even has his copy of the script, and so the main man is gonna be in there. Millie Alcock has the potential to become, the definitive iteration of Supergirl, and James Gunn has certainly set this project up for a lot of success. Blessed from the start. I'm looking forward to it, John. I know that you're looking forward to it. Any last thoughts on it before we wrap things up for Supergirl, or do you think we've kind of covered it all at this
I
point?
think we've kind of covered everything. We really got into it this time around, and
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I
definitely
wish
fun.
Lenny was here. She's been wanting Supergirl stuff, and we just spent like an hour talking about Supergirl.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and then Ron saying we hopefully we can get more Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Plastic Man. Yeah, you know what? I agree with you. I think we will. James Gunn loves Plastic Man, so I imagine that we will get that. And then as far as the other characters with like Hawkgirl, I mean we are getting Hawkgirl and Superman. Hawkman, I think they're gonna want to hold off on for a little bit, maybe for a separate thing, maybe a TV series or something, because I still think Aldous Hodge should return in that role because he did such a good job with that in Black Adam. But you know what? Right now, it's all about Supergirl, and it starts filming Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow on January 13th of this year, 2025. So, with that in mind, we will, keep an eye on it for the behind-the-scenes photos, any kind of like, leaks, and certainly the suit reveal and all those questions. I'm sure will be answered soon. We'll be here with you to talk about them 5 days a week. Of course, I'm looking forward to it. It's, like what we did with Superman last year. It was quite the summer. So hopefully we'll get, a spring of Supergirl, if you will. And with that said, John, I think we're gonna wrap it up for the show here because that's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. That's everything we know about Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, the second film in the new DCU, following up Superman, which comes out this July, and the next June you get Supergirl. So with that in mind, Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. It's been another nearly 2.5 hour show. We do appreciate if you hit the like button on your way out, if you haven't already. And what are you doing? Please do hit that like button. And as John just did, hit that subscribe button and tickle the notification bell, because we see that about half of you guys on the channel, I know the numbers, you're not subscribed, and I do not appreciate it. If you're checking us out 5 days a week, hit the subscribe button. You know, like, it really does help us out.
Y'all are catching strays.
Look, man, I was looking into the statistics and I was not impressed. I'm like, come on, people, help us out. It really helps to get more people in the door, and then, you know, expand.
Don't be too much of a beggar, Dan. You're looking desperate.
Calm down, man. I'm like, look, everybody here, thank you so much for stopping by. As always, thanks for checking us out live. And if you're checking us out after we are live, then be sure to stick around, because we will be here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So we'll be back tomorrow with Liz and an episode of DCU Daily alongside the Also Curious show. So John and I will be here as well. Until then, go out there and watch something DC related. Come back and talk to us about it. We'll see you next time on another episode of DCU Daily.